I've always had my eye on ZMF's headphones because they're such gorgeous works of art. However, my interest alone wasn't enough to motivate me to buy one. Part of the reason is that they're not particularly cheap, and since I already own some expensive headphones, I would have to sell some of them in order to purchase these. Still, I've kept an eye on their models, occasionally auditioning them in stores. So when the Bokeh came out and it was cheaper than most of their headphones, I thought it was maybe time to get a ZMF pair for myself. I auditioned it a couple of times and the rest is history. After owning the Bokeh for over 6 months now, it's time for a full review. The ZMF Bokeh is the company's only dynamic driver headphone in their lineup and one of the most affordable, retailing for $1,099. When it was released last year, the introductory price was $900, but it was only available for a limited time. The model I'm reviewing was part of the initial batch, while the current version has a different wood stain. Personally, I prefer the one I have now, but both look good. ZMF has probably made the best wooden headphones over the past few years. Egghead, a local store in the country, fortunately carried some models early on, though it was priced closer to the normal retail rather than the introductory price. After auditioning it for a couple of days, I immediately snagged a pair for myself, as I was looking for a sealed headphone that is somewhat portable for travel purposes. It's definitely not comparable to a wireless headphone. It's significantly chunkier and lacks active noise cancellation and wireless functionality, but I prioritized sound quality over those features, which led me to purchase these headphones. The Bokeh comes in a unique eco-friendly box that also serves as its presentation case. It includes 3 cables, 2 sets of pads, and a cleaning cloth, along with this piece of wood here. It would have been nice if it came with a portable case, though that might have added to the cost. However, they do sell a portable case for around $60, which you can add to your purchase. The build quality is fantastic. ZMF is known for using thick woods in their headphone cups, and the Bokeh is no different, featuring these gorgeous claret-stained limbo woods. There is some plastic in the construction, making it lighter than their other offerings, but their overall build quality is still excellent. The stock ear pads, called protein pads, feel very soft and roomy, while the headband padding is supple. There's actually another one in the box, a hybrid pad with a suede lining inside. Each pad has its own distinct sound character, which I'll discuss later. The connector going to the cups is a standard 3.5mm plug instead of the mini XLR used on their other headphones. This is definitely more convenient and practical, especially since this headphone is more geared towards portable use. You actually get 2 more cables aside from the 1/4-inch one with different terminations, an XLR and a 4.4 balanced. All of them are braided and are quite nice. The overall accessorization is fantastic, especially considering the price. Overall, it's a really lovely headphone both aesthetically and in terms of build quality. It's not as heavy as an Odyssey, but still feels dense enough to convey that it's a premium product. The ZMF Bokeh looks massive, and having auditioned other ZMF headphones in the past, I was worried it'd be too heavy for portable use. Turns out it's not at all, despite its listed weight of 480 grams. It is still quite big though, and if you wear it on a plane or while walking around the mall, you'll definitely get looks. Plus, in tight spaces, the cups are likely to take some hits since they're quite large for walking around headphones. But despite all that, it's one of the more comfortable headphones I have. The clamp is just right, the ear pads are roomy, and the weight distribution is perfect. And the cherry on top is that the materials are premium, so it feels really good to wear. The only headphone I have that's more comfortable than the Bokeh is probably the HD8XX, which is hard to beat in the comfort department. Passive noise isolation is just average for a sealed headphone. I used the Bokeh during various commutes and even on a plane trip. While it does attenuate some noise passively, it really won't compete with noise cancelers or even good sealed headphones, so you might have to crank up the volume a bit to compensate. But in my experience, the sound overall is lovely and inoffensive even on higher volumes. This is my first ZMF headphone purchase, but I've auditioned many ZMF headphones in the past, so I knew what I was getting into when I decided to buy a pair. My setup includes a Luxman P1U and a Schiit Bifrost 2 hooked to a Windows laptop, but I've spent a significant chunk of my time with the Bokeh using it unamplified directly from the headphone out, which I'll explain why later. Whether through my laptop's audio port or an old smartphone like the LG G8, which has its built-in DAC, I thought the Bokeh delivered. Before diving deeper into the sound, let's quickly touch upon the tonal profile of the hybrid pads, which is the pad that is not installed by default. With these pads, you get a more neutral presentation with less bass and a more forward upper mid-range. This doesn't mean the headphone becomes bass light or treble tilted, it's just that the balance shifts a bit. Personally, I prefer the sound of the protein pads, but you might feel differently, which is fine since both pads come in the package. That being said, most of my evaluation of the Bokeh is with the protein pad, so unless I'm specifically referring to frequency response, the rest of my subjective impressions should be consistent. The overall signature of the ZMF Bokeh is unsurprisingly warm and slightly bassy with laid-back upper frequencies. If you prefer a neutral profile, the Bokeh may not be for you unless you're into EQ or pad rolling. But if you enjoy a more fun, pleasing, and musical profile, you'll likely love the Bokeh. Starting with the tuning, the bass extension is great, but there is a mild emphasis around the mid-upper bass area, causing a bit of bleed and added warmth around the lower mid-range. If you listen to tracks that emphasize this area, you'll notice it, but for most of the music I listen to, it adds a warm character that makes for a relaxed, pleasant session. I definitely get some of the reverb that you get with closed wooden headphones, and I like it. The rest of the response sits lower than the Harman target suggests, resulting in a smooth overall listen. Do I sometimes wish to lift the upper mids a bit? Nope. Is the treble too recessed for some tracks? For me, it is, but that's why I own other headphones. If I want a more audiophile experience, I have the Utopia, HE1000, or even the HD8XX. But if I just want to enjoy music while working or listening to any modern pop tracks, the Bokeh is more than sufficient. As for the hybrid pads, I thought they would make me like the Bokeh even more by taming the low frequencies and bringing up the higher frequencies a bit. But that wasn't the case for me. I found the enjoyment factor, which is subjective, to be less with these pads. Yes, they are flatter technically, but I felt they took away from Bokeh's strong character as a warm, euphonic sounding headphone. I felt there was a reduction in overall dynamics and the overall liveliness of the sound. Again, your mileage may vary here. I know a lot of folks who prefer the hybrids over the protein pads, so take my input for what it's worth. Unsurprisingly, the subjective part of the performance is quite pleasing as well. The dynamics are quite good for a closed back headphone with a warm sound. The soundstage is bigger than I expected for this type of headphone, and the overall resolution is satisfying. It's not going to out-resolve my open back headphones, but it's not supposed to. Know what the best part is? It sounds really good without any external amplification, so there's that big convenience factor that you're benefiting from. Perhaps it didn't help that my setup of Fluxman P1U and Bifrost 2 was overly similar to the Bokeh character-wise, but I'd say I prefer the sound directly from my LG G8 phone or my Asus laptops out. I'd be curious how the Bokeh performs from a top-notch solid-state amplifier, but I don't feel the urge to try one for now. That's how satisfied I am with the sound directly from those devices. Now, I don't mean the Bokeh sounds poor from my DAC amp setup. I just felt it got a bit too warm and relaxed sounding for my liking compared to when I used it straight from my laptop or phone. For added context, my setup is optimized for the Focal Utopia and Sennheiser HD8XX, which can kind of explain why the synergy with the Bokeh may not be the best. I'm not a collector of closed back headphones, so this section will be brief. The Bokeh isn't the best closed back headphones I've heard. I've auditioned the Verite Coast, which was more incisive and had a better soundstage, and the Stelia from Focal, which had a nicer punch and better treble response. And both of those headphones are significantly more expensive, so I'm not really surprised by that. But for my own collection, what can I compare it to? My old ESW9 from Audio-Technica? The discontinued Sine from Odyssey? The Sundara Closed? You get the point. One headphone though that actually comes to mind when I listen to the Bokeh directly from my laptop is the old Edition X from Hi-Fi Man. They're not exactly the same tonally, but both sound good even without external amplification. For me, the biggest value of the ZMF Bokeh is its portability, specifically how good it sounds straight from any basic source. Now, sound is obviously subjective and the definition of a good sound varies from person to person. If a warm, relaxed sound appeals to you and you have other headphones to suit your more audiophile needs, then the Bokeh is a great buy. Suppose your use case is more demanding, like wanting a headphone that's as good in resolving as possible for less than $1,000. In that case, the Bokeh will be easily beaten by plenty of open back headphones, even ones that cost significantly less. But if you're after a sealed portable headphone that doesn't need amplification to shine, the Bokeh should be on your radar. And it helps that it looks great too. Not to mention that you can flexibly tune it to whatever your ears desire, whether through pad rolling, the mesh that you can purchase as an add-on, or even just through EQ. The Bokeh gives you plenty of options to explore. That is, if you're willing to do any of those things that I mentioned. That's about it for this review. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you saw and want to see more headphone reviews like this. You can also visit headphone.ph for the text version of this review. I'll see you guys next time.